Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou tātou. It's very nice to have you all here, and it's been a very interesting morning already, and I want to just welcome everybody and do the very preliminary health and safety, just the usual things. I'm sure you all know the drill. The wharepaku are out the door, round to the left, and also the same on one level up on level 3. This is level 2 of Te Papa. In the event of an earthquake, stop, drop and cover and wait until it stops shaking, and the staff will tell us what to do. In the event of a fire, the exit is down the main stairs and out into the forecourt. We are running a little bit late, so morning tea will not start until 11:15, and the other sessions after morning tea will start at, let me do my maths, 11:50, 10 to 12, and lunch will be from 1 till 2. That means we're going to be a little bit squashed up for the AGM for Museums Aotearoa, but we will manage that, I'm sure. After morning tea, there will be parallel sessions, so check your program as to where they are. They will all be signposted. And after lunch, there will also be parallel sessions in various rooms until afternoon tea time, after which we rejoin for a plenary session this afternoon here. So, not to take up any more of your time, I'm delighted to hand over to Lawrence Wharero of Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision, who's going to introduce a short video before we hear from our Minister, Honourable Carmel Sepuloni. Thank you.
I ngā mana, ngā waka, ngā reo, tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi tēnei ki te kaupapa tātou I rarau mai nei ki roto tēnā tā tātou nei whare. Ko tō hiuhinga o ngā kaupapa ko Aotearoa tēnei ko wai tātou. I te minita Sepuloni, tēnā koe, te ropu whakahaere o tēnei kaupapa, tēnā koutou, I tātou katoa I hara mai nei tēnā tātou katoa. I tautoko katoa hia ngā mihi ko mihia. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. As mentioned, my name is Lawrence Wharero. My title is Kai Toko Kaupapa Torotoro Ngā Aiui Matua, or Senior Outreach Engagement Curator, Māori Specialist for Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision. When Ngā Taonga were approached by the organisers in a request to support Museums Aotearoa Conference 2019 with relevant content from our collections to reflect on ourselves, to challenge our thinking around the conference themes and to generate conversation, we couldn't go past the clip that we're about to share with you this morning. From our TVNZ archive, we'd like to share this excerpt from the sesquicentennial celebrations Waitangi Day Live 1990, Tātou Tātou, One People. And we're quite fortunate to have the OB director in the audience with us from that particular day as well. In this clip we hear from Bishop Whakahuihui Verko as he delivers what we consider the most powerful, stunning and challenging kōrero at the commemorative ceremony of the 1990 Waitangi celebrations on the lack of care and responsibility that treaty partners have offered each other. His kōrero is lambasted, heckled and decried, particularly by protesters, but with dignity and sticking to his knitting and what he needed to say, in a few sentences he turns the whole tide and the whole mood of the day. To the point where he's actually cheered and revered by the audience. All the while he delivers his heartfelt concerns directly into the ear of the living monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, and senior members of government who uncomfortably look on. Play the clip, please.
Anglican Bishop of Aotearoa, the Right Reverend Whakahuihui Verco, will now deliver the address.
I runga I te ingo o te matua o te tama o te wairua tapu. Āmine. Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, distinguished guests, ngā mātā waka o te motu, ngā uri whakaheke o tātou mātua tūpuna, tēnei rā te mihi atu nei kia koutou, I whakakotahi mai ai tātou ki runga I tēnei papatapu, I te whakatinana, I ngā wawata, I ngā moe moe ā, o te tiriti o Waitangi. Nō rere kai te mihi kau atu, ki te hunga kua moe, nā rātou I whakatakoto tēnei kaupapu. Nā rātou I tuku iho ki a tāua ki ngā uri, he hātā tāu. He parārā ko te waha, he kōrero, he whakatinana rānei. I want to quote from Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon we sat down, there we wept when we remembered Zion. It is much more expressive in Māori, and I take liberties with scripture. I te taha o ngā wai o Waitangi, noho ana tātou I reira, ae tangi ana tātou, ia tātou ka mahara ki āhino. Some of us have come here to celebrate, some to commemorate, some to commiserate, but some to remember what happened on this sacred ground. We come to this sacred ground because our tupuna left us this ground. 150 years ago, a compact was signed, a covenant was made between two people. To this place where a treaty was signed to give
Some of
birth
the audience are
to a
obviously
nation,
not taking a full part in the divine service.
a
Having thoughts
unique
of their own to
and an
express.
unusual circumstance. Some of us have come here to remember what our tupuna said on this ground, that the treaty was a compact between two people. But since the signing of that treaty 150 years ago, I want to remind our partner that you have marginalized us. You have not honored the treaty. We have not honored each other in the promises that we made on this sacred ground. Since 1840, the partner that has been marginalized is me. The language of this land is yours. The custom is yours. The media by which we tell the world who we are yours. The needs and tastes of one partner is addressed in all our advertisements. And it makes me sad when we sing, "Give me a taste of kiwi with a red lion can." What I have come here for is to renew the ties that made us a nation in 1840. I don't want to debate the treaty. I don't want to renegotiate the treaty. I want the treaty to stand firmly as the unity, the means by which we are made one nation. The 1990 Commission has been bombarding me for 18 months of how I should behave, how I should celebrate, commemorate, how I should do things in 1990. And they did not tell me by what process and why I did these things. The treaty is what we are celebrating. It is what we are trying to establish so that my tino rangatiratanga is the same as your tino rangatiratanga. And so I have come to Waitangi to cry for the promises that you made and for the expectations that our tupunas made 150 years ago. As I look at the tranquil waters of Pewherang, as I remember the words that are spoken on this land, on this ground, as I remember the history of my people that is now beginning to be written, but I'm sad to say it is written by Pākehās, so that when my tupuna speaks, he speaks in immaculate English. He spoke in Māori. Why don't you quote him in Māori? And so I come to the waters of Waitangi to weep for what could have been a unique document in the history of the world of indigenous people against the Pākehā. And I still have the hope that we can do it. Let us sit and listen to one another. I want to say to the government, don't produce principles of the treaty. The treaty is already there. And so I conclude, as I remember the songs of our land, as I remember the history of our land, I weep here on the shores of the Bay of Islands. May God give us the courage to be honest with one another, to be sincere with one another, and above all, to love one another in the strength of God.
Nā reire te pihopa. Whakahoki e koe ki tua pairau ki te putahi nui a rehua. Kei reira koe noho ana ki roti i rātau tu wāhi ngaro haere, haere, haere. Hapiti hono tātai hono ko rātau ki rātau. Hapiti hono tātai hono ko tātau hui mua nei, tēnā tātou katoa. So the question really is, 29 years, 3 months and 17 days later, how honest and sincere have we been with each other? Ngā taonga, I hope this clip will stimulate, lubricate and challenge your thinking as you continue with your conference. And we wish you all the best. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Tēnā koutou e te mana whenua, kia koutou hoki o rongo whakata, tēnā tātou, tātou kua tai nei, ki te whakarongo, ki te whiriwhiri whakaro, ki te kōrero atu, ki te kōpapa e karanga ana, kia tātou katoa, tēnā tātou. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Lawrence and Ngā Taonga. As we've heard last night, as we've heard already this morning, the kaupapa, ko Aotearoa tēnei, it's not a statement that's settled. It's an idea that is in debate, it's an idea that is playing out around us, and it's an idea that we are working with. It sits in our mahi, it's what we do every day when we come to these places. On behalf of all of us here, I want to express my really deep thanks to Ronga Whakata once again, for bringing us into this place this morning and opening up this conversation. My role right now is just to welcome, not just to welcome. I say just because of what we've heard already. I feel very small right now. I feel surrounded by giant trees. But my job is to welcome Associate Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, Carmel Sepuloni, to the stage. Minister Sepuloni, those of you who are with us in Christchurch, She brought us into the light for the openings of our proceedings down there. Minister, your engagement with our work, it's warmly appreciated, and we particularly acknowledge you for the passion that you carry for the work in repatriation. It's especially fitting, I think, that you join us here this morning, again, as we're about to move our attention to this vital task of research and restoration of it and healing that we get to be part of. So if you could join me in welcoming the Minister to the stage.
Kia ora koutou tālofa lava. Can I just start by saying that it's a real privilege to have the opportunity to attend and speak at the Museums Aotearoa Conference for the second year in a row. Can I firstly acknowledge iwi and residents at Te Papa Rongo Whakata, Courtney Johnston, the Museums Aotearoa Chair, Museums Aotearoa board members, Te Papa for hosting this event, and the many attendees gathered here today. I was just sitting there saying, I really don't want to follow Bishop Virko. And as is all too often the case, that is the first time that I have ever heard that speech. In 1990, when New Zealand was very cognizant of the fact that we were marking 150 years since the treaty was signed, I would have been a 13 or 12-year-old girl in Waitara. And in the history books, in the media articles, in the stories that followed that event, I never have heard or seen that speech before, which really is indicative of the fact that there's a lot of retelling to tell, a lot of gaps to fill, and I know that many of you are playing a huge role in doing that in the work that you do as part of our museums network across Aotearoa. Can I also acknowledge Jodie and Taina for the awesome platform that was laid this morning before we moved into this room, and acknowledging the story that was told around Te Hau ki Tūranga, but also with regards to just sharing those historical insights that, again, many of us have never been privy to knowing. I know that, as was raised, I think, by Jodie during that session, there are moments in history that really are cringeworthy, that are painful to reflect back on, but as was also mentioned, that is part of the healing. And actually telling those stories, despite the fact that there are painful moments to them, also not only enables the healing, but for there to be that retelling and the rewriting of our history books, which I think we had the privilege of experiencing this morning. So can I acknowledge Jodie and Taina for sharing all of that with us. Can I use a quote in recognition of Museum Week, and I think it's very pertinent to the theme of this conference called Aotearoa Tēnei. It says, on the surface, museums seem to show us who we are, but their real mission is to transform. Visiting a great museum should emerge as a different. You should emerge as a different person, having looked at your society and your place in it, and reconsidered how you will live in it, ideally for the better. That's actually from Australian Arts Hub, the Australian Arts Hub website. I don't usually quote Australian sources, but I will this morning. From Northland to Rakiura, New Zealand's museums, galleries and whare taonga are kaitiaki of our memories, our stories and our precious taonga. They play a crucial role in our self-knowledge and our sense of place. Accessible and welcoming, these institutions are a place for all New Zealanders to come in out of the cold. They bring us together to engage with the things that define our nation, to experience different worldviews and to be inspired to think in new ways. In Aotearoa, we are a very diverse society and becoming more so. Differences of ethnicity, culture, age, circumstances, health and ability all contribute to the rich fabric of our communities. Many of you will have read in the museum's Aotearoa Quarterly Philippa Toka's moving comments about the 15th of March terrorist attack. She makes an important point about the role museums and other public institutions can play in fostering understanding across cultural, religious, demographic and political barriers. The aftermath of the horrifying attack has made it imperative that we all look more closely at ourselves and our values. Last year, at this conference, I talked about the importance of co-creating knowledge, drawing on the traditions, heritage and expertise of our Māori and Pacific communities. At the heart of Ko Aotearoa Tēnei is the concept of partnership and recognition of the multifaceted nature of history and knowledge. No longer should any one authority own and disseminate a single version of history. Rather, the onus is on all of us to create a genuine sharing of leadership and knowledge. The recently opened Te Tai nature exhibition here at Te Papa, which combines science and mātauranga Māori, has shown us again how bringing together scientific and cultural knowledge can create that truly holistic experience. Now that's just one example. Institutions throughout the sector are showing great leadership and working beyond their front doors to reflect many rich and diverse sources of knowledge and tradition. Core to Ko Aotearoa Tēnei is Te Tiriti o Waitangi, so very appropriate that we had that wonderful presentation. Our founding document, which is central to our identity, who we are and where we are heading. This government is focused on building better Crown Māori relations with work across departmental agencies gearing up in the context of Y262. We are looking ahead to try to give effect to the principles underpinning Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We're looking to the past too, with momentum building towards the Tuia 250 commemorations next year, with engagement from iwi, Pākehā and Pacific communities. Tuia 250 will be an important chance to recognise the historic meeting of two peoples. It will also be a chance to be courageous in looking beyond any sanitised or idealised versions we may have encountered about that time in our history. And I just want to refer back to what Jodie and Taina were talking about earlier this morning. It is about acknowledging our warts and all. And I remember very vividly in a piece written by the former head of state for Samoa, Tuia Tuatupua Tamasese, where he said exactly that, and the importance of not romanticising our history and acknowledging warts and all. So this is an opportunity for us to do that. Today, in the spirit of Ko Aotearoa Tēnei and acknowledging the theme of the session to follow, I particularly did want to talk to you about repatriation. Since the repatriation of Rapanui ko iwi in early 2018, as one of the first events I attended as Associate Minister of Arts, Culture and Heritage, I really have had a deep interest in repatriation. There's no denying the power in Māori present when a process is undertaken to repair what is broken and replace what has been lost. Last year I had the pleasure to speak at this conference and attend the repatriation panel, which I was hoping to attend today, but unfortunately, given we're running a little bit behind time, you might see me have to unfortunately slip out. The conference reiterated the need for action in this space, and I asked officials to work closely with the sector to understand how the government can support the great work already being undertaken by museums and other arts institutions, and where our response can be strengthened. Over the past year, it's been interesting to note the growing awareness of what is actually held in museum collections, especially around ancestral human remains and taonga and the history surrounding the origins of these items. The shameful practice of trading in human remains has left a terrible legacy of hurt among Indigenous communities worldwide. Repatriation cannot take away the wrong that was done, but it really is crucial in the process of reconciliation and healing. It's heartening that in recent years the global community has come a long way in its attitude to precious remains and taonga. And I really have to commend the sector here in New Zealand today, and thank you for your commitment to returning these ancestors and remedying the wrongs of the past. You really are stepping up and doing the right thing. I think no one would disagree with that in this room. This includes the return home earlier this month of 121 Māori tipuna and Moriori karapuna from the Charité Institution in Berlin and Museum Rollick in Amsterdam. Another recent milestone in March this year was the repatriation by Canterbury Museum in partnership with Ngai Tuahuriri of 3 tipuna to Native American Confederated tribes in the Columbia Plateau in the USA. There have been many amazing successes in repatriation, with some museums already having returned all remains they were holding to the communities in which they belong. Behind these successes have been the huge efforts of many iwi institutions and officials working often across international borders. The commitment by so many is inspiring, and I hugely commend our museum sector for your leadership in this space. We all share the conviction that repatriation is the right thing to do. We've been hearing from museums that in order to make progress, New Zealand needs to have a more consistent approach, and that additional government support and guidance is required. The government would like to support the sector to continue to build on its repatriation initiatives. The Ministry for Arts, Culture and Heritage has been working with Te Papa and the New Zealand Repatriation Research Network, as well as contacting museums individually to explore options for how this might be achieved. As part of these conversations with museums and sector professionals, it's clearly evident that the wider cultural sector is building strong foundations to progress this important work, but there are gaps and barriers, particularly concerning capacity, resources, and the ability to research provenanced remains. I'd also like to acknowledge the partnerships that many museums have developed with local mana whenua, including through repatriation, which need to be protected and nurtured. Today, I assure you, we have been listening, and I can confirm that the government will be providing support to the museum sector to assist with the repatriation initiatives. This will include practical assistance through Te Papa, such as helping museums with provenance research or logistics. The Ministry will also dedicate some funding through Te Papa's national services, Te Pairangi, to support domestic repatriations aimed at the institutions which really need the most assistance. This funding becomes available over the next 2 financial years, but we will continue to look closely at what longer-term financial support is needed from government to ensure the success of New Zealand's repatriation efforts. Discussion with Museums Aotearoa Te Papa and the New Zealand Repatriation Research Network have also have identified the potential to co-design an agreed set of principles or a charter underpinning the repatriation of ancestral remains, as well as best practice operational guidelines. This doesn't mean that government will be telling museums what to do, which I'm sure you'll all be relieved with. We recognise you are the experts, not us. Rather, this is about finding the best way to support the work of the wider cultural sector in this hugely important task. I hope this is a step in the right direction and will give the sector the help it needs to build on progress so far. This is a very exciting time for repatriation in New Zealand, and I'm looking forward to hearing further discussions, even if I can't be present for the panel discussion today. Enriching New Zealand's culture and identity is a key priority of this government, and I'm proud to have responsibility within such an amazing portfolio. Today is but one example of the many vibrant issues that the cultural sector brings to our attention, issues that resonate with who we are as New Zealanders at home, in the Pacific and in the world. I want to take this opportunity to thank Museums Aotearoa for inviting me to talk to you today and for your tireless work supporting our precious museums, galleries and wharetaunga. This is a sector full of inspiring people committed to learning and scholarship, to the precious taonga of Aotearoa and to enriching our communities. I want to applaud you all and wish you a fantastic conference. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
All right, it's now my very great pleasure to welcome my colleague, Dr. Amber Aranui, and her panellists to the stage for our first panel discussion of the conference.
Atamari e koutou. What great news. Okay. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou I tēnei ata. Ko taki timutu waka, ko kahurāna ki te maunga, ko ngaru roro rawa, ko tuki ngā awa, ko haungerea te marae. Ko ngā rangi koenaki te hapu, ko ngā te kahununu me ngā te tūwhare toa te iwi, ko Amber Aranui ahau, o takuta Amber Aranui ahau. Who would have thought? So good morning, everybody. I'll be your facilitator for this, what looks to be a very interesting panel discussion. As we know, today's theme, or treaty theme is the principle of protection. So repatriation, restitution, return and restore are all terms which align with this principle. And this is the focus of today's panel. So last year we had our first ever, as far as I'm aware, repatriation panel discussion. And this panel, I feel, was a success. So much so that we created the New Zealand Repatriation Research Network. And the aim of this research is to provide, I guess, a system or a way of supporting and sharing knowledge for the purposes of returning tupuna or ancestral remains back to where they belong, with their people and to the whenua. Our previous panel last year talked about repatriation as a practice and its role here in Aotearoa. We also discussed things like policy, international human remains, how we are dealing with those tupuna who are unprovenanced, as well as issues around modified human remains. And I think that's something that we will probably continue to talk about in the future. And we also talked about where the need was to support the return of these tupuna home. As many of you know, not every museum has a dedicated budget to do this mahi. We also heard from the Associate Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, the Honourable Carmel Sepuloni, and she noted last year that repatriation can be seen as a tangible contribution to spiritual healing and reconciliation. And her comment, I think, brings us nicely into today's panel session titled Mending Relationships, Building Futures Through Repatriation. The aim of this panel is to highlight some of the positive relationships which have developed as a result of returning ancestral remains or tupuna, as well as taonga, back to iwi, hapu and whānau. And with the continued support of Minister Sepuloni, as announced today, I hope that we can continue to share and create more of these positive stories. So this panel is set out quite slightly different from last year, in that we have 4 presentations that will be about 10 minutes each, and they will be sharing their stories around repatriation and why it's important for them. This will be followed by 20 minutes of questions and answers, so make sure you've got a question ready. And, you know, if time permits, I have some questions too, but we don't have to get into that. So, ka pai? So, let's get into it. So today, we're lucky enough to have 6 amazing people here who will share 4 very different experiences relating to repatriation. I will introduce each speaker just prior to their kōrero. So our first speaker today is Maui Solomon. Maui is an Indigenous rights lawyer with over 30 years' experience. He is a former commissioner of the Treaty of Waitangi Fisheries Commission, and for 20 years he was the lead counsel for the Y262 claim, dealing with Indigenous flora and fauna and cultural knowledge, as many of you will know here. That this was the first government claim to be heard by the whole of government claim, to be heard by the Treaty of by the Waitangi Tribunal. For the past 35 years, Maui has a leading role in the renaissance of the culture and identity of the Moriori peoples of Rekohu, Chatham Islands, a people once described as being extinct. He is currently the executive chair of his tribal organisation, Hokatihi Moriori Trust, and currently chief negotiator for Moriori in the settlement of their historical treaty claims, which date back to 1862. So let's give Maui a hand.
Ko rangi tokona te hirangi. Ko rangi tokona e te hiata. Ka tū te pau, kiru pakera atarangi. Ka tū te pau, kiru pehore atarangi. Ka tū te meme anuku, ka tū te meme arangi. Ka tū te kahi anuku, ka tū te kahi arangi. Ka tū te paurangi e, hoko menatai mero. I te mana whenua o te whanganui a taranaki whānui, raua koa Ngāti Tōranga Tera, tēnā teru. Ngā mihi ki ngā mate me ngā aitua, a ki te kaihanga, i homaitea, i tangohia hoki. Nō reira, te hunga kāinga o te papa tongarewa, I tēnei wā, rongo whakāta, ka mihi nui ki ako, e ngā waka, e ngā mana, me ngā karangatanga maha, koe mā, koro mā, rauranga tera, tēnā kōtau, ka mai anake me rongo. So thank you, Dr. Aranui, for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I just want to acknowledge my fellow panellists. Also want to acknowledge our rangatamatu and fellow trustee, Mr. Tom Lanours, who's up here in the audience, and my mahine, Susan Thorpe. Susan was one of the founding senior researchers on the Karanga Aotearoa program for Te Papa back in 2004, and she was working with the ancestors of Moriori, and now she's actually living with a living one. So, kia ora e koe. I also want to acknowledge Arapata Hakiwai, Dr. Hakiwai, for the excellent work that he and his team at Te Papa Tongarewa have done and continue to do. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to stand here and say again that Te Papa, through Dr. Hakiwai's leadership, was the first really national institution in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to really embrace Moriori and to say, here's a space for you, you tell your story the way you want to tell it. And that was over 20 years ago. And we've built a very strong relationship over those years, and more recently focusing, well, not more recently, it's been going on for a long time, but on repatriation of our karapuna, which I'll be talking a bit more about today. I had also had the pleasure to accompany Dr. Hakiwai and Te Here Kiakia. I don't know if Te Here's here today, who's the head of the repatriation unit at Te Papa, and also a fellow trustee of mine, Grace LeGros. We went to Europe, to Amsterdam, to Berlin and to London to bring home our karapuna and our tupuna from those institutions, and it really brought home to me just how highly regarded Te Papa is internationally. So not only has it developed really strong relationships with iwi and other institutions throughout Aotearoa, but it's really developed excellent relationships with institutions and museums overseas, and that was brought home to me in the speeches that were made at the Museum Frolic in Amsterdam, and also the Charité Institute in Berlin, and also Natural History Museum in London. And we have still to bring home over 300 Māori and Moriori karapuna and tupuna from the Natural History Museum. And while we're in Europe, it became known to us that there's a further 78 ancestors to bring home from Vienna, and there's a sort of a multiplying effect. They're out there. But it's a bit like the living or the dead are bringing the living together, and through that portal developing much stronger relationships, not only on the repatriation front, but I think in a whole lot of other contexts. So it's really an honour for Moriori to be part of that, and I know that our karapuna are very happy. The ones who came back with us this time, very, very happy to be home. I'm not sure if, they're in the vaults here in the Wahitapu area of Te Papa Tongarewa, but we'll be taking them back home hopefully next year, or perhaps the year after. We'll have in excess of 500 of our karapuna to repatriate to Rekohu and Rangihauti. Rekohu being the name of the Chatham main island, and Rangihauti is the Moriori name for Pitt Island. And so we will be taking up our karapuna home after their long sojourn overseas. There's also a large number of koimi scattered throughout museums around Aotearoa, New Zealand, and there's probably about 150 plus of those to come back, and they'll all be gathered here at Te Papa, and then we'll take them back home to Rekohu. We haven't actually found, or we haven't decided finally on the reinterment site or sites, but it's likely will be close to Kopinga Marae, which is now the heart of our people on Rekohu, the marae that opened in 2005. So I do have a little PowerPoint presentation to show you, and at the oh yeah, there we go. So towards the end of the 19th century, there was a belief prevalent that many indigenous races were soon to become extinct, and Māori and Moriori were among those so-called races. And in the case of Moriori, by 1870, we had a surviving population of 100 individuals out of a pre-contact population of 2,500 plus. So in 50 or 60 years, our population had gone from 2,500 down to 100. And so what you see here in red is all of the places where our ancestral remains were buried. So Moriori had a practice of burying a number of different burial traditions, the most common being in the sand dunes, which surround most of Rekohu and Rangihauti. But they also lashed bodies to trees, and in fact they've been in the past when settlers have cut through trees, they've found there's a koimi lashed inside that tree. There was also a cremation ceremony, and they were sent out on waka. So there are a number of different traditions, but the most common was burying in sand dunes. And there are still, as you'll see in the subsequent slides, a large number of koimi chakat that erode on a regular basis out of the sand dunes. And so Moriori have probably, out of all of the iwi, we have more of our karapuna out there in institutions in New Zealand and offshore than probably any other single iwi, and that's because of two things. One, their accessibility to our human remains, and two, because of the belief that Moriori, at the end of the 19th century, that Moriori was soon to become extinct. And indeed, when my grandfather, Tommy Solomon, passed in 1933, at his graveyard, or at his graveside, Moriori were indeed declared to be extinct. And I was taught at Temuka High School by my social studies teacher that there was no such people as Moriori, and if there were, they were now extinct anyway. So, Moriori having suffered loss of life, land, liberty, language, we then had to suffer the indignity of being told we didn't actually exist, and there were myths created. The most common, that Moriori had lived in New Zealand and had been here before Māori, and then had been driven out to the Chatham Islands as refugees. Folks, that didn't happen. Did not happen. But that's what was taught at the schools for the 5 or 6 generations of New Zealanders, because it justified, if Māori come and displaced Moriori, it justified Pākehā coming and displacing Māori. So it was a politically expedient story to be telling young New Zealanders. And so Māori were penalised, but the greater sufferers of that mythology was Moriori because we were just forgotten about. So in the last 30 or 40 years, there's been quite a significant renaissance, and it's been a struggle, but this is why we have great respect for Te Papa, because they have embraced us right from the outset. So this is Rekohu. These are the places where our some of the places where our karapuna can still be found. This is on the west coast of in Petrie Bay, Hawaruwaru, and that there is a skull that's in the ground. And this is the northern coastline, all right from the east or the west to the east of the northern coastline, all contain Moriori koimi. And here you see these. I took these photographs in 2016. We were just driving along the beach, and you can see just human remains coming out of the sand dunes. And Tom Lenore's, throughout his lifetime, been born and bred on Rekohu. His role has been to rebury, and still is, to rebury these koimi wherever they're found. This is Taia on the eastern seaboard. This land will be coming back to Moriori, and it's a place of great cultural and spiritual significance. And you can see, for example, this is one of the midden sites. I mean, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of tons of material that have been deposited over centuries of occupation, and there's koimi all through those sand dunes. This is our little team doing some survey work back in around about 2006. Some more midden sites. So this is all on Taia, and you can see some of the koimi eroding out of those areas. And this is another place of significance to us, Ocean or Manawi, or Ocean Male as it's called now. And again, all through those sand dunes there are human remains. This is Rangihauti on Pitt Island, and the areas that have in the orange circles are places that were occupied, and where you can still find many examples of mehiki or taonga. Our Moriori word for taonga is mehiki, and so it's all over the island. And this is a place on the east coast, Waipaua, and that was a very prominent place for occupation all along those sand dunes, all full of koimi. And here we have, even now you can go to these places and you can see some of the old cooking sites, fireplaces, there's flints and remains of seal bones, bird bones, and in some instances human bones. This is Tom giving the kōrero about this place. And just to finish off with some photographs of some karapuna, and you'll see in the bed they wear the hopo. Our word for albatross is hopo, the hopo feathers, and they were worn as a symbol of peace, because our people had been a warrior people when they first arrived, but had outlawed killing and warfare, and had lived in peace for 500 or 600 years, and they made a commitment to peace. And by doing that, they maintained their mana, they maintained their tikani and their custom law, and that's why I will never accept that Moriori were a conquered people, because we made a conscious decision not to fight and kill again. And these are some of my ancestors, and that's Herawana Tapu with the staff, and two from the right is my great-grandfather, Rangitapua Horomona-Rehi, and this photograph is taken at Manukau on the southeast coast of Rekohu, where Susan and I live. And there's Hirawana Tapu, to whom we owe a great debt of gratitude, because Tapu was a boy of only 10 or 11 at the time of the Māori invasion in 1835 in an English sailing ship. And he lived to tell the tale, and he wrote a heart-rending petition, a 131-page petition to the Crown in 1862, asking Sir George Grey to come and set this island right. The land has not been taken from us in accordance with tikani moriori, with moriori customary law, and they looked to the Crown for justice in 1862. The result was the establishment of a native land court in 1870, which then deprived Moriori of 98% of their land and gave it to the recent arrivals, who by that time had returned to Taranaki. So we have, in the last 3 years, we've been negotiating a settlement of these historical claims, and we hope to initial a deed of settlement in the middle of the year. And this is Moi Moi Atoa. This is a leaping off place of our ancestors. So this is our equivalent to the far north, where the ancestors are thought to leap off. So there's a blowhole there just on the left, and the sea just rushes up through there, and this big plume of seawater flies through there. So that carries the ancestors' spirit back to their homeland. And just to conclude, this is a photograph of our little team who went to Europe, and this was taken at the Charité Institute in Berlin. So, just again to thank and acknowledge Te Papa and also the government for supporting the repatriation program, and look forward to continuing that mahi and to eventually taking our karapuna back home. So, kia ora no tātou.
Thank you, Maui. That was great. So our second kōrero is from Tāpunga Nipe and Matua Iru Mahia Smith. So Tāpunga is of Rongo Whakaata and Ngātai Manuhiri descent, and is kaitiaki Māori at Tairāwhiti Museum. So Tāpunga has worked on some very successful iwi and community joint exhibitions at Tairāwhiti Museum, including the most recent award-winning exhibition, Taonga, Paremata Mangatū Taonga Returned. Matua Iru is uri o te whakarau, kaumātua of Mangatū Marae, and is a key iwi advisor and support member of the Taonga Paremata Mangatū Taonga Returned journey and exhibition. So today, Matua Iru and Tāpunga will be sharing with us the journey of the return of these taonga from the Auckland War Memorial Museum. So originally from Mangatū, the taonga have now returned to Tairāwhiti, with custodianship being transferred to Tairāwhiti Museum. So let's welcome our next speaker. Do you want to play now? Okay.
Heard about the Camper collection, must have been in the 1940s. And our father took us on holiday to Auckland to have a look at the collection in the Auckland Museum. He was very keen to see it. And it was later on when Uncle Rod, who was 95 at the time, spoke about it, and he wanted them to come home, so he asked me to see if we can bring them home.
Oh, kei tamato whare ngā taonga. Kei rere pupuri ana. Hea tētahi o nā taonga. A ka tōna mai e pikita kota mai he. Nge taku whakaaro naini, te ahini no e pātaka kai me haumaru mo ngā kai. Koina o nei whakaaro. Engari ka kite au nā whakaero hika ma puta whare kai e ka mataranga tira teira.
I te wā ina hona ngā Pākehā reira rāta hoki ngā tangata e tiaki nei te whenua. Aka haere rātau, aka tiro haere. Ako hea nei reira ka au te Pākehā ki te tiro haere. E ni reira ka ki te rātau ngā poro I wireia.
It was actually my grandfather's brother, Malcolm, who found the tonga in the cave at Mangamaya.
Whetu pē whakataku pakeke tau hoa. A kata nā ko ka koro mai e nā koro nā mea wāhi tapu, me nā mea ana, e rua nā wāhi kei Mangamaya, e rua nā ana. Nāna e kia kauka, a koto haere ki reira. Me tērā hoka aua tawhiti, tērā pīkauroa. Engari me tata kaua koto haere ki reira. Tā he rua, ko iwi, a koroa o te hunga o tō wā, e reira.
When the tonga were taken, there was a curse put on the family, probably more on Duncan than the others. And that was that the family name would die out. So after my generation, there are no more boys with the Campbell name. So that has happened. I'm happy that the Tonga have come home, but we won't be getting our name back. So it's great to have them back home. A great pleasure to be able to do it.
Engari me kora mo te tamaiti. Kora. I moe ana mātou ke reira na tonga. Na tona tipuna. Me ki e hara. O to kore mōheo nā tikanga pē. Kare mōheo hea I pērai no te mea. Tā kai rihi kei rora, kei reira e kaupapa mō rātou e me ka ki te rātou tō tonga. Engari me wai o kawai nā koro kei reira, ko te mea ko ki te hau. I te wiki hori. Me kore, hika, ko maua kei te mōra koreta. O pāre kare. Ka te mihi atu ki ai. Mānei pupuri, pai. Nā tono whakaaro rangatira, whakahoke mai tūranga. Koera. Koera te tino tonga ki au. Mōna. Tōna aroha. Ki te iwi e koni. I koro pēnā. Kei te rere kono nāmi. Kei te rere kono. Te wāhi ngaro. Kei runga, kei raro, kei mua, kei muri, kei roto, kei waho. E a whine e a tātou e roto e ni kaupapa. Ka reira, te mana whanua, te mana tangata, koutou. E te whakatena mai tēni kaupapa. Tēni wahanga o te kaupapa. Whakāturanga tonga. Pupuri tonga. Te wahanga kia. Hai, ko hau. Me ki kei te ki te whārua. E mahu e nei tō tātou karau. Koe atu. Tēnā kalawa, e tino tangata ki tā langa hau. Ko e takaitaki tō waka. Nai ne ko ngaro, mā tātou e koe nā i tēni wā. Nō reira, me tīmata, ko mga haumi te mau. Ko mga tū te awa, honoa ki mai o waipawa. Ko kowa kopu te te putanga mai. Ko tūranga amua, tūranga ararau, tūranga makaurau, tūranga tangata rete, tūranga nui akiwa, ko te tahina aiwi o tai tamai. Tēnei te mea tono tuatai, kai tono. Tuarua, ko mga haumia te maunga, ko mga maia te awa, honoa ki mga tū o awa. Ko mga tū te marae, te pautako manawa ko rawa te taumuni o ngāre ki kaiputai. O te ika roa a lauru, ko mai atu tangata. Ko nā te mea tuaru. Tuatoru, o te kaitono, ko mga tai kapua, te maunga. Ko waingaramia te wā. Ko te paka ke o whirikoka te papa ora. Tō ka taia hāmiti te marae. Ko ngai tamatea te hapu, ko tamatea aiti te tangata. Ko era nā kaitonu. Nā kai pupuri taonga, ko kite e koto nā whakaua. Ka tau iwi. Me kōroa hau mō era. Ko kite au, ko longa si nā kōroa i te rata e rongo whakata. Te iau e ni kōroa e kei rere. Te muru a whenua. Tama. Ngā reira, kia hoki au ki te rata reu. Kia moe o tātou, e o te tika moe ni. Just be giving the whakapapa of the three iwitas involved. They were the kaitonos. And the land, the leases, you saw a scriptural film of the leases. There were some of them. It was 120,000 acres of land. And what the people of Mangatū did, they incorporated it, they alienated it, so the owners wouldn't be able to sell it. That's how they kept their land. So in doing that, the leases had to, the trustees had to lease the land. That's how they got their leases of 7,000 acres, 6,000 acres, whatever it is. But there's two leases in there, in that script, in that picture. That's where they, and during the selling down for farming purposes, they had to clear the bush, clear all of the land. And in doing so, they also came across Wahitapa. And they came across the caves. And that's where the problem was. Was mentioned in there that when the people heard about it, they got some people in amongst them to tell the leases, do not touch their land because it's inappropriate on our chicken. But it has been mentioned there that their family was subject to other things. But in doing so, yes, they fostered well, they prospered well, and the land is doing well, what it is now today. We got to give into that. But, well, the thing was about the story is to bring it back together. because it was a landowner in the Auckland Museum gave us a message that there was some tonga up there, 15 items. So we investigated, yes, it was, and we got onto the families. And that's where we got together and started to have a report about one another. And it was simply because the ownership fell on Karen, such a woman. And she was, to us, she was a welcoming part of it, to bring them back, because of what they did to their family. So in our role as co-martyrs, we supported her in that, to get her from Auckland. And that's when the Gisborne Museum came into the picture. And they were the mediators between the iwis and the Lisis, between us. And what was it? A few years, a few years going through to and fro, whakawhiti kōrero, whiti whakaaro, all that. Took a few years until last year we got a message from Tairāwhiti. They are coming home. Auckland are bringing it back. So we set a pōhiri, e raro nā tikanga, pēde kawe mata. We did all that. And on the 3rd of March 1918. Yeah, 2018. Only 1,000 years behind. 2018. It happened. All those dreams, we all dream about it. And they come true now and again. But this time, it happened. And the fortunate thing happened when we welcomed them onto the marae, onto the atameda, to go through the procedure of tangianga, roi mata, heke hupe, nā puehu aroa e koro ai. Wera me momo mahi katoa, ka mahia. Muri e tērā, ka whakoe, after we did all the outside ceremonies, we took them inside for the karakia. First of all, what we did is to whakawātea, and next minute to whakanoa, and the next part was hahau torongo. That's why I go back to whakahaungia te rongo pai, I runga te aroa me te aroa. Tāku kia ia, whakaingo e, whakahaungia te rongo pai o ngā tonga whalemata, I runga te aroa me te ngāware. Now the aroa part of it came from Karen. But so aroha to get it back to the marae, so that the tongas will be closer to the Nauri, to the wiri, so be closer to them and have access to them, in which we are still negotiating now. So that's our journey with that one, and we are fortunate to have a young team from our museum to guide us where we were. They just about a month, they ate with us, slept with us, everything with us. And they also went on to the land where they actually happened. They got into the environment. That was the beauty part. They felt it. Ka pūrea te koe te hau all that sort of thing. That was the relationship, and the report that came out tonight is the end result of what we did. So at this stage, I pay tribute to my karaua. He was the leader of our waka. Just 2 months ago, he passed away. He'll be happy, looking down, he's happy. We know. But at the meantime, thank you for listening. And I'd like to hand it over to our coordinator, Sabun. Kia ora tata.
Tēnā tātou. I don't have much to add to that, but I would like to, as Papa has mentioned, acknowledge the late Rutene Irwin, who is a key member, kaumātua advisor of this project and the return journey of these taonga. And I would like to also today acknowledge Eru Mahia Smith and his wife Phyllis Smith. He kaumātua te tokorua nei, but they have made themselves available to be here with you in Wellington to share the story. It is very difficult for kaumātua to be here, but at the same time, it is wrong for me not to invite the right people here. Now, I want to express this because in the past I have been to conferences like this, and there are stories shared about taonga or relationships with iwi and hapu and whānau, but it's only the directors and museum staff members that present the kōrero. So, hei whakatina nei te kōrero mana taonga, this is a reflection of mana taonga museums. So that's all I like to say. The journey, there was talk about healing, forgiveness and love. And as Papa mentioned, in that vision of te kōti, that is a reflection of this exhibition and of this return journey. Nō reira, koe nā noi ho ngā kōrero, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Thank you for sharing. Well, something to think about, isn't it, for the future? So now we have Whaia Vonnie Wood of Ngāti Kuri. Vonnie was sharing with us her experiences of the repatriation of tupuna back to Ngāti Kuri and the relationship between the iwi and Tamaki Paengaihira Auckland War Memorial. She'll also talk with us about the influence of Y262 on that relationship. So I think it's pretty fitting. So let's welcome Vonnie.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Ko kohuroa te maunga, ko pārengarenga te wahapu, ko mai e ke te whaia tūpuna, ko Ngāti Kuri te iwi. Ki o te mea tuatahi I maharana koutou ki tēnei kupu ko tira me wā, ko tira te flora, ko wā te fauna, flora me fauna. As we go on, I'll relate it to you. Kei reira te mauri o tira me wā e noho ana hoki te Y262. And now, here we go. This is going to be funny because I don't quite know how to work my phone so that it doesn't ring while I'm reading from it. So I know there's a switch somewhere. I haven't figured it out, okay? The first thing I'd like to talk about is how we came to the end of the process of our kōiwi repatriation program. And I'll just retell the last story where we had along our eastern border of Pārengarenga Harbour a group of 3,000 of Ngāti Kuri were slaughtered over a period of about a week, about 270 years ago. And the story tells itself as you walk along Waikuku Beach, heading north from the southern end, up in the sand dunes, pera ia Maui Solomon there. All up in the sand dunes, we find a whole lot of kōiwi. And then you get to the top end, and there's a whole lot more kōiwi, smaller in stature, and each one has got one or two children around them. And so that was the end of our repatriation program. We found Coralie O'Hara, who's been my best friend. She has been my best friend over this 3-year period, rang me one day and said, we've got some koiwi for Ngāti Kuri. And so we talked about it with our taumata kaumātua, kuia, and our trust board. And we came down en masse to Auckland and picked them up. But the story went awry because we had what we thought to be a mother and child, but the child was missing. And during the period when koiwi were being, taken by hikers, people looking through the motu, hiking around, looking around, just souveniring bits of wheua, bits of koiwi tangata. And very, throughout the sciences, people souvenired or brought them back, and they had a purpose for them, not to discount the reasons, but we didn't know about them being taken from our rohe. And so we decided to take her home anyway, and we placed her so we placed her in the caves at Kapuwairua, and we named her Tatariroa, and we waited. And in April this year, Coralie rang, she emailed me, and she said, her email was, guess what? And I knew straight away she'd found it. She said, I'll look for it, I'll do my best, Bonnie. I promise I'll do everything I can to find the child. And she found the child in the Human Sciences block at Auckland University. And best knowledge thus far is that the child was used for dentistry, because they needed a child, mandible, for display purposes, for learning purposes. And so I came back down and picked the child up, and they're both with us now. We have to go back to Kapuwairua, to the caves, and pick up Tatariroa. And when the summertime comes, because it's a horrible journey out to Waikuku, we'll return mother and child back to the northern end where all the rest of them lie. So, those are really, really sobering issues that we have to deal with koiwi repatriation. And I mean, just everything serious aside, and the people from up home call me, oh, here comes Von, the body snatcher. There are jokes going on around it at the same time, and that's a good thing in some ways, because it can be quite weighty. Anyway, I'll go to what I'm supposed to be talking about. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. So, firstly, actually, I forgot to mention straight away. Firstly, I feel privileged to have been here last night to connect with, ever so fleetingly, and being part of the awards ceremony. The opportunity to fleetingly connect with those who dedicate themselves to outstanding service was uplifting. Tēnā koutou katoa, tō mahi aroha. I would like to touch briefly now on my tribe's involvement with Tamaki Pāngahira and our ongoing koiwi repatriation process. In April this year, the last of our Providence Ngāti koiwi tangata were repatriated. The outstanding issue now is that of repatriating unprovenanced koiwi. While other iwi may have solutions, Ngāti Kuri offer the following. We've set aside close to Te Rerenga Wairua, bearing in mind that we're kaitiaki for Te Rerenga Wairua, and that's not in a urupa, but as close as we possibly dare at a place called Tapu Tāputa. Some of you may have camped there and called it Tāputs or Tāputaputa. There's a camping ground there, but in the vicinity and across the way from their campground, we've set aside a wahi tapu for something like this, should it come up. So, while other iwi may have solutions, Ngāti Kuri offer the following. The offer applies only to unprovenanced koiwi, and I realise there are different statuses for unprovenanced koiwi. Ngāti Kuri will take up to 45% of the total unprovenanced kōwiwi. This will take place over a period of 3 years at 15% repatriation per annum. Depending upon the other iwi take-up, it is hoped our overall amount decreases. At the end of the 3-year period, Ngāti Kuri's involvement in the repatriation program will cease. So I'll just leave that aside for a minute and go to the Waitangi Treaty Waitangi Claim 262 na. Me maharana koutou na, tira me wā. Okay, the indigenous flora and fauna and cultural and intellectual property claim, tira and wā, remain our guiding ancestors over this never-ending journey of understanding, maintaining, sharing, and most importantly, enjoying the relationship we have with our environment. Following 5 or 6 excerpts actually from the 2001 Waitangi Tribunal report covering New Zealand law and policy affecting Māori culture and identity. Excerpt 1. The claim is an opportunity to embrace an Indigenous understanding of the environment and how the proper application of this knowledge can result in benefits to the environment and the wider community. The claim is not therefore something to be feared by non-Māori. Ka haka ana koutou tēnā, ne? Tuarua, it is clear to us, the Waitangi Tribunal, as it will be to anyone who cares to think about the subject, that a future marked by interracial rancour must be emphatically rejected. We say that not just because we choose a path. We say that not just because to choose a path of conflict is morally wrong, nor even because it is the antithesis of the treaty's vision. We say this because it would be economically and socially destructive for the country. Me maharana koutou, ne? Right? Excerpt 3. Demographers tell us that to assure the economic well-being of New Zealand in the next generation, the growing Māori workforce and Māori capital must be moved from the margins to the core of our economy, and quickly. Law and policy must be developed with express and urgent objective of capturing, not squandering, Māori potential. Our collective future will depend on that objective being achieved. This choice is not about pandering to the Māori grievance industry or preying on Pākehā guilt, as detractors would have it. It is about gearing up to meet the challenges of a future that our grandparents could not have predicted. Excerpt 4. Viewed from this broader perspective, the law provides for no particular recognition of the interests of iwi and hapu communities in their traditional knowledge and artistic works, or of the relationships between those communities and their culturally significant species of flora and fauna. He aha te ingoa mō tēnā, tira me wā. Kia ora. Excerpt 5. Similarly, we, the Tribunal, feel strongly that urgent steps need to be taken to address the policy failures of the last 30 years if the Crown is to demonstrate in concrete terms its commitment to the survival of te reo and respect for Māori culture and identity when entering into international commitments. And the last one, Excerpt 6, regarding intellectual property. The Tribunal saw that these claims presented New Zealand with an opportunity to be first mover in international law reform. To that end, my cousin Sarah Smith was over in New York 3 weeks ago, and she had her 3 minutes at the UN where she brought the 262 forward and said, look, 8 years have gone past. This was a commissioned inquiry paid by the New Zealand taxpayer. It's about time it's brought into law, and I support that. So law reform, with all its attendant advantages to national interest. International frameworks for the protection of traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expression, what we in New Zealand call mātauranga Māori, and taonga works are currently being negotiated. Now, currently being negotiated was 8 years back. No? It would be far better for New Zealand to lead the debate than simply receive its result for compulsory implementation. So that's the opportunity. End of excerpts. I like to refer back to the Ngāti Kuri Repatriation Program. I mentioned earlier where my last point, that was that 3 years hence our program would cease. 8 years have gone by since the findings of the flora, fauna and intellectual property claim was released. Hea te mea nui rau atu ko te whakamahinga o te mahi a te tangata ki te whakahau I te koiwi tangata ne. Kei reira te mauri o tira me wā e noho ana ki te YT62. What is most profound is that a shroud has formed around the repatriation of koiwi tangata. Within lies the mauri of tira and wā, the personifications of the Y262. These two kaitiaki wairua remain our constant companions as we carefully progress into te ao o te ngaro, where secrets will not easily be given up by those we call the unprovenanced. The repatriation process speaks of humility, sadness, hope, and fruitfulness. And Ngāti Kuri has, over the last 3 years, deepened our ties with Te Paingahira generally, but more especially their repatriation team, who share a preparedness to ebb and flow with purpose. So, ka mutu taku kōrero. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's great. Okay, so finally, just to mix it up a little bit, we have Simon Jean, who is a PhD student at Victoria University's Museum and Heritage Studies. And his research is focusing on the repatriation of human remains from France. So Simon is a former intern at Karanga Aotearoa, and he continues to aid in building relationships between Te Papa and French institutions. So today Simon will talk about the relationship between the Natural History Museum of Rouen and Te Papa following the repatriation of a toimoko in May 2011. So let's give Simon a hand.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I whanau aho I Rouen, Normandy. Kei te mahi ki te whare wānanga ki te whikitiria here in Wellington. I just want to introduce a little bit about the geographical location of Normandy, even if it's quite well known. It's important just to show you that it's just over here. And Rouen is the capital, regional capital of Normandy. And this status give it also like quite political and of course cultural responsibilities. And we can clearly see that by the Natural History Museum over there. It was created in 1828 and it is considered today as the second most important museum in France in terms of collection and a Natural History Museum. And it stored nearly 800,000 items. In this collection, this entire collection, there is just a third who's been exhibited. And so what about the others? That's the main big question actually in France about how can we look after so much collection alone. And I think repatriation could be a good way to look after that with the source community. We try to, in 2007, after 11 years of closure, a new director was assigned, and he wanted just to know more about the collection he was looking after. He was responsible for. And at this time, we discovered, as they said, a tomoko in the wooden box in the back of house. And so what can we do about this tomoko? And he decided just to Google repatriation New Zealand. And he found, yeah, that's true. Yeah, French guy are sometimes a little bit weird, but. And so, yeah, he discovered the contact of the late Seddon Bennington, who is was the chief executive here at Papa, and also the contact of the repatriation program and the manager, Te Herekeke Herewini. they decided just to organize first repatriation in October 2007. And of course, that would be another proof that French are weird. The repatriation was declined by the Ministry of Culture exactly the same day. In the morning of the ceremony, the City Hall of Rouen received a call from the Ministry of Culture just to say no, we can't repatriate because we are highlighting the strict laws that define the museum collection in France. And we'll see that in France, this repatriation process was way more political than cultural. This negotiation and this debate around repatriation brought also to light this paradoxical nature of the legal status of human remains in museum collection in France. Two different codes, the Heritage Code and the Civil Code, as you can see here, are clearly saying something different. And this debate not involve just only museum professionals, but also physical and social anthropologists, law professors, historians, politicians, and just a little part of this debate was given to the source community. So it was important just to move on this debate by trying just to work all together. And that's why in 2009, I came here for the first time to do my internship and to gather all, as much as information as I could at this time to understand the Maori tikanga around the kaupapa here on the repatriation. It was at this time also that we tried just to make this collaborative investigation with the COP, and we could give necessary information to the French Senate to create a specific law for the repatriation of Tomoko. So you have to understand that France doesn't have any repatriation policy, national one, and each institution has to follow its own path a little bit. And so Rouen was the first to highlight this debate, and it was clearly following the Civil Code and not the Heritage Code. And so he wanted to repatriate this Tomoko. Then, in 2011, we did the first repatriation, the real one, in May 2011 at Rouen. And we did another repatriation ceremony in Paris in January 2012. And this second one was concerning all the other Tomoko in the entire public collection in France. So Rouen was the first to acknowledge the fact that Te Papa wanted just to acknowledge the fact that he was the leader of the operation in France. But in Paris, we gathered all the different ones, and so we are talking about, in total, 21 Tomoko from 11 different institutions located in 8 different cities. It's the first time in France that we did a repatriation of human remains of the entire collection, I mean. So here's just a picture of different repatriation practitioners or individuals involved in this process. And so the Museum of Rouen at this time wanted also to use this opportunity to maintain a relationship, not just to return one Tomoko in a temporary action, but try to maintain a relationship. And the best way to do that was also to gain more information about the Tonga still stored in the museum. At this time, during the negotiation, the Museum of Rouen wanted to create a permanent exhibition of the Tonga, but also all the collection from the Pacific. And he could do that with the help of Te Papa. By negotiating with the return of the Tomoko, we also organized different hui, but more like contacting by emails and stuff, to gather more information on each taonga. And I will take just one example of this taonga. The tauihu over there is one of the biggest prow stored in Europe, and so we didn't have any information about it in the first place. And this repatriation process and this contact gave the Museum of Rouen way more information about the story and the whakapapa of this taonga. And so we clearly made some investigation around the context of acquisition, and we knew that in 1837, a French whaler came in New Zealand a French ship came to New Zealand to protect the whalers and the French whalers around New Zealand shores. And that's quite relevant with what you said, Salomon, because it was, the captain of the ship was Jean-Baptiste Cécile, and he was commanding the Heroine, who came in Bay of Islands in 1837, and he knew that one French whaler had been attacked by a iwi in the Chatham Islands shores. So Jean-Baptiste Cécile decided just to get revenge and wanted to destroy the pa of the iwi in the Chatham Islands. And so here in this pa, he could gather, after destroy it, he could gather all the taonga he could to give it to the Museum of Rouen, his birthplace. So the only information we had, it was just that. Jean-Baptiste Cécile gave a collection of taonga, nearly 60 taonga in Rouen. With the repatriation, we could also know some way more information about them. The iwi, the context of the Chatham Islands at this time. We could also try to exhibit it as an appropriate way according to Maori tikanga. For the installation and design of this exhibition, we also asked a contemporary artist to come over and try to design all the showcases. And we asked George Nuku from Ngāti Kahungunu to give us a hand to try just to design all the exhibition. So it's not a big exhibition. I mean, like, it's not really impressive in terms of size, but because it's the first one to really allow the source community just to have a perspective, to introduce their own perspective on this collection, it was important for the French Museum in Rouen Museum just to highlight these outcomes of the repatriation process. So George Nuku came for 3 months, and apparently he really loved Rouen, so he stayed a little bit longer. And we decided just to invite him just to create his own exhibition 3 years later. And he's doing most of his art piece based on plexiglass and polystyrene. And so we create an exhibition around the plastic in the world and the climate change. And so it was called Bottle Ocean 2115. And since then, George Nuku is also staying in Rouen. So if you want to meet him, he's in Rouen. I wanted finally to show you this Papuan costume over there. It's not, it's a traditional one, of course, but it's not the point. The point was it was given by the chief himself in 2012. It's not a donation by a former French explorer or naturalist or collectors. The Papuan chief came in Rouen just to look after this collection. He heard about this collection. He heard about the project of this inclusive exhibition. And he wanted just to acknowledge that by giving the costume, giving us the costume to the museum, yeah. So as we can clearly see in this case study of the Museum of Rouen, this collaboration with Te Papa for the creation of the Oceanian collection exhibition is the first step undertook by Rouen Museum to initiate a new approach towards its ethnographic collection. The main idea behind the concept to consider the museum as sustainable and responsible, as he liked to introduce itself, is to see the museum as a place of debate and not just a French curator debate or French politician or French someone. So it's really important, I think, to acknowledge the fact that the repatriation could be also a good process to get the first contact. And then maybe if we cannot repatriate everything because it will be too scary for the French authorities, we can also try just to work together and try just to exhibit in the appropriate way all the Tonga. Thank you. I think it's done.
Kia ora, Simon. So we've run out of time, so we can't do questions. I've got the big. But I just wanted to say that, you know, these important stories that our panellists here have shared, you know, show the importance of repatriation, but also the importance of relationships, and actually how the different ways in which those relationships manifest themselves. So let's give our panel a round of applause, and I'll give them all a big kiss. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora anō, and we definitely didn't want to stop this kororoi because it's so important, and thank you so much for all of that. Just one thing to note, as we did last year at our annual conference, we are not giving individual gifts to our speakers. Instead, we are giving a donation to charity, and the conference committee this year has chosen the Wellington Refugee Family Reunification Trust. So there will be a reasonably substantial donation to that trust at the end of the conference. Thank you. And as you know, we're running well over time, so we have adjusted the program slightly. There will now be a very brief comfort stop. There is tea and coffee and a snack upstairs on level 3 in Oceania, but the next sessions will start at 12:15 and they will finish at 1 p.m. Lunch will run 1 to 2, including the Museums Aotearoa AGM, all in Oceania. Thank you.